Good afternoon. Okay, we're in the afternoon session. Mike, we'll just turn it over to Public Works and let you start.
Great. Thank you, Commissioners. Mike Moss, Public Services Director. We'd like to start today with an executive session for 15 minutes on contract negotiations.
Okay. Wow, right off the bat. huh?
Sorry. We knew we have an audience, so we'll make them wait.
Contract negotiations, what'd you say, 15?
15, please.
15 minutes?
Yeah.
Oh, and I should say, and I see you have it here, List is out from Parks, so there'll be no Parks today. We'll
Correct.
reschedule that. Okay. We'll adjourn to executive session.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, back from executive session, no actions taken. We still doing public works? Okay. Can I say things about Longview while you're here? Mhm.
So good afternoon, Susan Eugenius, County Engineer, and on your quarterly open houses agenda today was Public Works Road Administration. So this is our first time through, so I hope you like how I've decided to do this. I took the list Kelly sent out and took topics that we don't usually talk about with you guys to kind of run through to give you an idea of other things that are going on in road administration. And I lumped in stormwater and development review because we run those through our road administration separate from water, sewer, and solid waste. So I was going to start running through some items, upcoming resolutions that you will be seeing in the next 6 weeks. We have 2 road vacations coming, Todif Road and Oswalt Lane, that we've been working on, and they keep getting pushed to the back, but I've put those on my right-of-way agents. She's finished Title VI, and now we're doing these road vacations. So you should be seeing that soon. She is also working on finalizing the franchise agreement with Comcast. So those are items you'll see fairly quickly. We're also, this year, it kind of is upcoming resolutions and reviews and updates. So as part of Public Works, whenever anybody is working in the right-of-way, they come and get right-of-way permits from us. We have 3 different, we had 3 different, now we have 4 different permits that you can get. There's a notification permit, which is generally PUD gets those. They're not cutting the pavement. They're working on the wires. They give us a traffic control plan. There's a utility work. So when somebody's actually cutting the asphalt, we get those. There's a base charge plus they get charged the amount of time the inspector spends out there. There's a driveway approach permit, which everybody putting in a new approach obtains. Those are a grand total of $25. Oh, no, excuse me, $0 for everybody. And then we just added a new permit in response to the new private road ordinance, the way private roads are being handled by building and planning to avoid the potential of somebody designing the road and getting it all done, approved by building and planning, and then coming to Public Works and going, this has been approved by building and planning, and want to build it. We want them to come and get pre-approval from us for the location, so they don't go and do all this effort, and we come back and say, you need to move that 20 feet because of site distance. So that it's a pre-approval, it's a no cost. They just come in, notify us, they work with one of the inspectors, and so they can site the road. So that was in response, and it has been rolled out with BPAC, and they were happy that we have moved forward with that. So as part of our permits updates, we're going to be updating our utility accommodation policy. So that's in policy review and updates. So item number 2, first bullet. So our existing policy was adopted in 2001. We need to modernize this and add some of the items we've been having issues with. So utility conflicts, who pays for what, notifications to Public Works. So we just want to update that policy. This past 6 to 9 months, there have been quite a few issues with the fiber installer. And we're hoping by updating our permitting process and our policy that we can avoid some of these issues we've been having.
Well, we keep having work done, and then all of a sudden you come across this line that we don't even know is sitting there.
Yes, and that is one of the things fiber companies are notorious for. We just found.
Is this the one we were having where PUD was pushing back on us a little bit on this
No,
one, or is this different?
This is same but different. PUD pushed back on the franchise.
On the one above?
Yes, they don't want to get a franchise with us, and so they've pushed back on this. This is how they interact within the right of way. So who goes in what locations, what the backfill policies are, jacking and boring versus open cut. So that's what that policy is. But we have been having more issues in fibers, the one that's most notorious. And not only that, they're not very good at locating. We've cut in the past month, we have cut 2 fiber lines during construction that were not located. So it just is the nature of what's happening. So that goes into the franchise agreements and our utility accommodation policy. We are finding in speaking with other counties that we are not alone with these issues. They're hard to get a hold of. They don't want franchises because a lot of them trace their lineage back to the original telephone and telegraph system, so they're not required to have franchises. So it makes it a little more difficult for us, but we're working on keeping that moving. The other big policy review and update that we're working on in the next 6 months is our Title VI program. WashDOT has said that in addition to the countywide Title VI program, there has to be a public works specific chapter. And so we're working on creating that with their template. I'm passing that off to Patrick because I think he'll really enjoy it. I told him to come and smile and nod. So those are my big policy review updates. I have others that I'll start working on later in the year, but those are the short term that I'm looking at getting up and going. We have a couple new programs that you'll be seeing this year. We talked about at the end of the last year doing the transportation system plan. We have our consultant on board. We've had some kickoff meetings. They're in the process of collecting all of the initial data, and then we're going to be doing public outreach in March and April with here's some information, what are your goals and objectives. There'll be online surveys. It'll go to outreach will go to the Planning Commission. We'll go to some combination of Public Works staff, farmers market, or some other community event in the spring to get the information out. We'll take that information, add it into a draft, and then in August, we'll do our next public outreach push back to the Planning Commission. We will partner probably with Stormwater, who always does public outreach in August at Squirrel Fest. So we'll probably piggyback with them out at Squirrel Fest. And then we're hoping to have a draft that we can present to the board for review in September or October, so we can adopt it prior to the end of the year to help coincide with the comp plan update. So we are making progress, and I'll keep you guys informed on where we are on that. So one of the things I don't talk about very often with you guys that you're going to hear a lot about today is our stormwater program. So our stormwater program has a lot of intricacies that we just kind of do. So we have 2 new programs that we're working on this year. So the first is a Stormwater Management Action Plan, which Ecology calls SMAP. So in the previous version of the permit, we were required to create a SMAP, and we went with a very minimalistic approach, very general, and we got audited last year, so towards the end of middle of last year for our 2020, so last year was 25, so our 2023 permit, which is when this went in, and they said, no, that is unacceptable. So we are working with our consultant to
Of course they did.
create a new SMAP, Stormwater Management Action Planning. So it basically sets our priority watersheds, and then eventually you roll that into what they call the SMED, which is Stormwater Management for Existing Development, where we will be going into priority watersheds and doing stormwater retrofit projects. So
I'd make it even more general just to make their head hurt.
So then the next stormwater program that we're doing is a street sweeping program. So to meet our MPDS requirements by July of this year, we have to have developed and implemented a street sweeping program that focuses on priority areas. So high traffic streets and industrial and commercial areas within our stormwater area. And we will be required to, at a minimum, sweep once between July and September and 2 additional times per year in those areas. And by sweep, I never say this right, and sorry, this is a public meeting. So we have brooms that sweep and it flies in the air, and we have brooms that suction it up like a vacuum cleaner. So you have to use the vacuum cleaner type sweeping in this program, because by just blowing it around, it still ends up in your storm system. The street sweepings then have to be properly disposed of. So,
Do they work off the same machine?
no, we have 2 different types
Two
of
different
sweepers.
types?
Yes. So that is a process. We're developing this out of these. And one of the things you'll see in the future, because 2024, we were discussing having to unfortunately increase our rates out there, because we're at the same rate we were at, was it 2016 when it was adopted. So we are going to be looking at the cost of these programs and how we're going to work that out of our funds. We have been fortunate, because we did not spend a lot in the early sections of our program. We have money that we're spending on these programs, and Ecology does offer those minor grants, which we've been taking advantage of to implement our program. So you'll see that in the fall, in the budget, we'll be talking about how we want to address these fees. We'll probably try and start that prior to the budget process, so that we have a good idea of where we want to go with the rates and fees, so we can budget appropriately. So that's the bad news. So the fun news, the things that we do with stormwater, is outreach. So I left you some presents up there. So we do, as part of that, community education and public outreach. So we do every year for school-age kids, we do the calendar contest for middle school. There is a video contest for high school and a coloring contest for elementary school, because we have selected as our target audience kids, youth, figuring that they learn and carry it through. We have locations where we drop these off. They just had their award ceremony for the 2026 calendar last week. So the kids do get prizes, gift cards to go out and purchase, but we do it countywide, not just program area, but we generally get the same one school, one art teacher, one science teacher will get into it. And so we'll get a lot of submissions from that school. We've had a lot of creative poems and drawings through the years. The kids get a little excited about that. We drop them at all the local libraries to hand out every year. And I believe it's the Kalama Library who starts calling when it doesn't get there. Where's the calendar? We're all waiting for our calendars. So that is a popular event. We also go to public events when there's an Earth Day event held. We do our outreach as a consortium with Longview and Kelso. We call ourselves the Cowlitz Clean Waters, and there's a website for that. And so the 3 entities, and CDID number 1 is a subrecipient. So we all participate in these public outreach events. So we generally go to Earth Day, Squirrel Fest, which is why we have the little squirrels, if anybody ended up with the squirrel. Fire department open houses is a popular one. And we do outreach to both the kids and the parents. So we have trivia for the parents. There's a spinny board and that kids can spin and win prizes. So we have those squishies we hand out. We have magnets with the themes. There's sack bags that we hand out. For the parents and the raffles, we did a rain barrel one year with the trivia game. So we try and get people engaged in learning about stormwater through this process. Public Works in general, in addition to what the stormwater does, we attend career fairs. Woodland, Castle Rock, every year we're invited to their career fairs. I know we've also gone to Kalama. There's also, we've been to Cowlitz, does a career day, and we've had equipment out there. Savannah and I have both been invited multiple times to Cowlitz Middle School to talk to their Abbott program to help get kids interested. We've gone and spoken at the CAD class at Kelso High School. Whenever we're invited, we're happy to go talk about public works and the different facets and what you can do, both with a college degree, without a college degree, and all the different avenues. You can join the community and get people excited about public works and what we do. So technology-related issues that we're talking about this year. So we have a construction manager who is just now coming up on a year in the position. Our former construction manager retired March of last year. And one of the things he and the inspectors have asked for, which I've been waiting for, is they're interested in getting some construction management software so that they have all their inspection forms and the files and everything's digital. It sets up the file server and everything they can pull up. Right now, we're using a bunch of old Word documents and Excel spreadsheets, but that was the comfort level. So now we're looking at exploring an option for construction management software. I've reached out to some of the other counties to find out what they're using, some of the local inspection firms. So I'm excited about that. I think it's going to improve our processes and cut down on some of the time we spend doing the payments, because our process right now, they have literally a old ticket book that has 3 slips on it, you know, the old 3 carbon paper where they write down, I collected this many truckloads of crushed surfacing base course. The site foreman signs it off, he gets a copy, the inspector keeps a copy, and the construction manager keeps a copy, and then they type that in to the form. So with this new, they would have electronic ticketing books, so they could type it in, email it to the contractor, they can agree, and it would automatically upload into our pay tickets. So we're looking at trying to find some of those efficiencies within our construction management group. So that's one of the things that I think is going to be exciting for Public Works. And we're continuing to integrate Gizmo, which is the asset management system that we need to use for CRAB. They converted us over from an old database to a GIS base, and they call it Gizmo, which is a combination of GIS and mobility. That's how they came up with the clever name. So we're working on integrating that into our system, and what other neat things we can do with GIS, live mapping for during storm events, what roads closed. So we're working on getting more of that stuff available and public facing. I know over the past few years, if you've been on the Public Works site, we have a very good research site now for the surveyors to pull up all of our right-of-way data, and we're working on getting more mapping that's public facing. That will be useful for people. In addition to that, for overside load permits, all of our bridges are mapped, and you can click on the bridge and see what load restrictions there are, when the last bridge report was, all kinds of good information about all the bridges on the system. So my next item is a question. I'm sorry, I'm going really fast. Did you guys have questions?
Well, I had questions about your engineer lingo, squishy, spinny board, and scroll, but we're long past that, so.
Okay, well, you know, maybe I went off on the squirrel direction.
I got a new cone now that I'm out of my excavator on my
Yeah.
driveway.
So the next is a question, because one of the items was partnerships with agencies. Oh, I know what I forgot. Outreach, our new baby for stormwater. If you can pick up that bucket that I left over there. So part of the things we need to do is stewardship. So Cowlitz Clean Water is sponsoring Adopt a Dame. So that's the Cowlitz Clean Water logo, and Public Works is on the back. So Adopt a Drain is a new stewardship program that we're rolling out right now. So you, as a citizen of Cowlitz County, can go and online map at the website, which I can email everybody the address, go and say, oh, in front of my house, there's this storm drain. I'm going to volunteer to go out and clean it whenever I see leaves and garbage sitting on it. And you get to name that storm drain. So this is a program that's done in various locations across the county, this country. It started in Minnesota and Washington State, and a lot of the local agencies are now doing it. So there's all kinds of fun names. There's schools that adopted in different grades, competitions. I've seen Mr. Drainmore is one of the names out there. So, you know, you guys can get creative with names if you're interested in adopting a drain. And so that bucket at one of our outreach this fall is we're going to encourage people to sign up, and we have 20 of those, and the first 20 people will get the bucket. There's gloves, there's a safety vest, and one of the pickers for people to use to adopt the drain. So that's a new and upcoming stewardship activity that we have out there.
How is the name of the drain recorded?
Well, if there's the whole website, so you can go onto the Adopt a Drain Washington site. You can type in your address. I typed in Early Bird Lane earlier today. That's one of our roads in Lexington. And all of the drains in Lexington on that street will pop up. They're yellow if they're adoptable, I believe, and green if they've been adopted. So you can click on that storm drain if it's green and see if, say, Patrick Harbison adopted it and he called it Mr.
Drains a lot?
Drains a Lot. And he's cleaned it 6 times and picked up 6 pounds of garbage because that's a self-reporting part of there. And so you can go out and pick a different drain in that area and say, I'm taking this drain and I'm going to pick up more garbage than Patrick. So what this does for the county is it keeps the garbage out of the drains. It also will produce reports at the end of the year that we can include in our annual stormwater management plan report that we had 10 drains that were adopted and they spent a total of 24 hours doing stewardship and we collected X pounds of garbage. So I know up in Tacoma, I believe Tacoma is one of the areas that I was looking at. There is an elementary school where there's first grade, second grade, third grade around the school. They had different grades, all had adopted drains. Some schools do it in their science programs, but it's an opportunity out there for just a neighbor or anybody to do it.
I would assume a neighborhood could, or an HOA could say, we're going to take care of the drains in this and do all that.
Yes,
Yeah.
just a little neat, different thing that we're trying to see if we can get more community involvement. All right. So item 6, partnerships with other agencies and organizations. And this is where I have a question for y'all. So past few years, as you know, we've been short-staffed and very busy, and we've backed away. Public Works has backed away from going to the collaborative meetings. And so now that it's 2026, and I guess I'm asking for a feeling on the board if you would like Public Works to resume having a presence on that collaborative effort. Go to their meetings and.
Do you feel that your presence is valued there?
Sometimes. I feel that Public Works has a different take on the world because you have a lot of planners and environmental and elected officials on the board. And a lot of times they'll be talking about projects and we can get this grant, we can do all this stuff and it'll be easy and just take like that. And Public Works can give that perspective of, well, when you're doing the grant, you have to think of this, who's providing the match, who's going to be the sponsor, who's going to get all the permits, how long is it going to take? So I feel that sometimes that practical getting stuff on the ground is missing from that group. So we can give value.
We're talking about the Spirit Lake Collaborative.
Yes, the Spirit Lake Toutle River, I forget all the letters. That's why I just called it the collaborative.
I'm probably a little skewed in that I've attended a couple of those and I'm struggling to find out what they actually do. If somebody wants to help me with that, please. And what value, what has resulted from that. Particularly, I'm referring to the Toutle River and the spillway and that type of stuff. I don't know if they do other things, but yeah, I would really need, as far as why it exists, I would need somebody to help me with that. That's personal opinion. You guys can contrast that
Well,
if you'd like, but
I can give you the original history of why it started back in 11. I know it's more recent than 11, 14 or 15. It started because of the tunnel collapse. And it was to look at alternate solutions for that. And it's evolved into this, well, we can't just look at the tunnel. We need to be looking at the Toutle River. And
It's grown,
How
and
long
grown,
ago
and
was that?
grown, so.
I think I went to my first meeting in 15 or 16 at the latest.
10 years later and we still don't have, we're no further along with regards to the tunnel. Except we did have a NEPA here last year.
Yes, we did
about
have the
that.
NEPA.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I don't,
I'm pretty much along the same lines as Commissioner Rader. I would tell you, if you find value and you have time, then I'd kind of leave it up to your call.
Okay.
I'm not gonna force you, at least I went to a couple of them at first and I was going, wow, I'm not sure what's happening here. So we just started doing the direct approach to our legislators. Hey, we have a problem up here.
Mhm. All right, so the last item on my list is public feedback trends or concerns. So just kind of to give you a feeling for what we in the Public Works Office generally hear from, and then to get some feedback on you if there's other things you want us to be looking for. So our general phone calls are for speeding, signs in the right of way, and guardrail request. And we deal with them the best that we can. Speeding, and the sheriff will tell you this also, speeding is a driver behavior issue. I mean, we can do some things to engineer it out, but we have never had a formal speed bump policy because speed bumps are an issue with chip seal. They're an issue with emergency response. You know, there's a multitude of reasons that I don't think you want speed bumps on Rose Valley Road or Kalama River Road, which is one that's been complaining lately. So we hear a lot of that. We've had a big kick with signs in the right of way right now, private business signs. So we've been working on getting those down, and guardrails. So those are what we hear. Are there any items that come to you guys that you feel like we need to be addressing better or putting
You know, when
words
you-
in the public?
When you talk about the speed signs, and I've heard you talk before, the speeds are kind of designed based on the road, right? Because
Mhm.
you have somebody or you have a machine or something that kind of tells you where it
Yes.
should be in that. So it's not, so I think you're right. It is a driver behavior because the speed sign is more of a design of what the road capacity is. And
Mhm.
it can change if you get more driveways or more people. I get that, but I think it's actually kind of two different things, really, right?
I was once told, this was 10 years ago or so, that they used to get a lot of complaints about speeding to Willow Grove Park. And the residents down there would blame the park goers and the fishermen. And so when the sheriff's office went down there and started ticketing, almost all of their tickets went to the residents. The park goers read the speed limit sign, but they just weren't as comfortable with the road as the residents. So the residents just went fast. It's a comfort level with the roads you're on.
Yeah.
I had this conversation up in Cougar with regards to the speed signs there. And the state said that they're not going to change the speed limit there, but there are things they can do to impede speeding. And I think it was us on Kalama River Road there, as you're coming down the river before you get to Mahaffey's, and as you're going up the river before you get to Mahaffey's, there's almost like rumble strips that were
Rumble
put
strips,
in.
yes.
And those are nice because those definitely make you aware of, okay, I need to slow down.
Of the
That
issue.
seems to be a cost-effective way anyway to get people to alter driving habits.
And just so that you know, we did receive comments on those rumble strips that they're noisy and they wake up the neighbors.
Really?
Yes.
Jeez. Can't satisfy.
But yes, they are an effective, get your attention, because we put them out on a dike access road as you're coming up the hill before you make that sharp turn. We put some out there also just to, hey, wait, are you paying attention? They're fairly common on divided highways back east where you're going a long way and there's no traffic control. They'll put them across the road when you're coming up to the first traffic signal after 30, 40 miles, just to grab your attention.
Yeah. Actually, don't you think like line of sight type issues are more important to me? Being able to see or
Mhm.
brush cleared and all that kind of stuff, the line of sight stuff seems to. I'd have more concerns with the other and I know out west side, county was out there because they shaved the whole side off of the
Yes.
highway recently.
And
Mike, you should have come up my driveway.
Yep, we do. There are, especially in urban areas, there are ways to make the streets narrower, which helps people gives people the perception that they have to go slower. So narrower lanes, they call them chicanes, where you have the bump outs where you have to go around them so your driving path isn't straight, planting trees to make it feel like you're in a smaller space. But in the rural area, especially because those trees and things are behind curbs, so your clear zone issues are different. But when you have trees on the side of a rural road, you can hit the tree a lot easier than if it's behind a curb.
I believe in enforcement. If you don't have enforcement, I don't care what you do with signs or speed bumps or ditches in the highway or turn it to gravel so it's breaking the windshield of the guy behind you.
That's
I guess
true.
If you don't do
true.
enforcement, we're just throwing dollars down the drain.
Mhm. So that was what I had for our Public Works review. I'm kind of would like at some point feedback if that's what you guys want to see moving forward on how we do this.
The thing I've asked other departments is what do you see coming from Olympia that us sitting here might be able to help because that kind of gets into our arena a little bit.
So I wrote down a couple things.
Okay, good.
So one of the big things that's going to impact us, which is a weird thing that nobody else thinks about besides Public Works and WashDOT, is bridge washing. So
Bridge washing? Really?
bridge washing. So there's a MPDS permit for bridge washing so we have to wash bridges to inspect bridges. We need to inspect bridges to make sure that they're in good shape. So it's a cycle. We have to do it in order to inspect bridges, but there's all these environmental considerations you have to take into account. So the current permit expires in July 31st, 2027. And so Ecology has done essentially a complete rewrite of the permit that I have one of the engineers who's more involved in the bridge program reading to get comments on. They've added, before if we just did a spot cleaning, we didn't need a permit. Now spot cleanings are added. The State Association of County Engineers is also working on a comment letter. Snohomish and King County and Thurston County have the staff and they're really jumping into this to review because I pulled up the line and strike version today and it's a complete rewrite when they said it was an update. So that is one of the things that coming up from Olympia is coming down. And then the legislative items, a couple items that I'm watching, there's an emergency culvert replacement bill. It's Senate Bill 6154. This is actually, if they impose it the right way, this is in the right spirit that could actually help us. So this emergency culvert replacement bill could allow for a replacement of culverts in an emergency to pre-loss condition if the agency commits the same amount of dollars that it would cost to go from the pre-loss condition to some of these bridges that we're having to do in what they have prioritized as a high priority fish habitat watershed. So we could put back in a 5-foot diameter culvert on, let's say, Pleasant Hill, which is what it was before it went out. If we commit it to a high priority project, with the cost difference would be what this would allow you to do in an emergency. So for a project, that's one example that we have. Another project we have is out on Rose Valley Road, milepost 7.72. In the storm of 2021, the end of the culvert was blown off, the embankment was impacted. We did an emergency contract where we just reinforced that road because of all the log trucks that are going in there, put a new end on it. But the Fish and Wildlife was, no, you have to upgrade it to a full fish culvert, which is one of the projects that we'll be doing next summer. We've been working on it ever since. It's going to have to be a bridge. It's fairly deep. If that was on a small non-priority habitat, we could say replace it to that same existing 4-foot diameter pipe and then add that commitment to, let's say, an Ostrander Road bridge, which would be a high priority if that was our high priority watershed. So that is the spirit of this. I know we currently don't have our watersheds prioritized, but we could run it off of what the Lower Columbia Fish Barrier Removal Board claims is that has designated their high priority areas. Some of the other counties, the bigger counties, Snohomish and Thurston, they have fish culvert whole programs on this. And so they've prioritized areas, which we have not reached that level yet. We've just been working with the fish barrier people to work on that. So that's one bill that's out there. I believe you brought up yesterday, Commissioner Dahl, the accident risk zones bill. So we're watching that. There's a House Bill 2172, which is route jurisdiction, abandonment, and transfer. So there was a study done by the Washington Transportation Safety Commission talking about, and this is state route transfer. So I don't know what year they did it, but West Side Highway has gone back and forth between the county and the state. So that is it's a whole how they're updating the process of that process would go. So let's say, I know at some point they talked about, oh, let's have the Lexington Bridge as State 411, and then the rest of West Side Highway and the Castle Rock Bridge would
Well,
go
they're
to
gonna
local
try and give you that
jurisdiction.
section of West Side Highway, no doubt about it.
No, but this is the process that they would go through, is that what this bill is related to on how they do that process.
You may not toot your own horn, but I'll toot it for you. The section of West Side that the county is responsible for, if any normal person goes out and drives that and then drives the state, they much prefer the county.
Yes, and that is actually, that slide on West Side Highway is one we get questioned about all of the time.
Yeah.
So that is out there. And another bill, which I didn't write down the number that I was looking at. There's some tribal coordination bills out there for your transportation programs. And it mainly is GMA counties, but I know that will be transferred to us. That is part of the push. There's a prompt pay bill out there, which was out there, but it's not scheduled for a hearing, so I don't know if it'll go out there. So there's a prompt pay and there's a prevailing wages bill out there that are related. The prevailing wages bill, what the contractors, and it makes sense from their point of view, is they want you to have to pay the prevailing wage at the time the work is done. The way the law currently reads, we have to pay the prevailing wage when the job is bid. So let's say we bid it in March, February. We open the bids, award it. So you pay whatever the prevailing wage is in February through that entire job. They update the prevailing wages maybe twice a year. So in the summer, the prevailing wage might have changed, but we're still paying February's prevailing wages. there, in general, the prevailing wage change in a 6-month to a year time is not drastic. The labor unions their issue with that is the large washout jobs that last 5-6 years. So they're still only required to pay the prevailing wage that went into place if it was a 2020 job. If they're still working on it now, they're still paying 2020 wages. So the counties and the cities, our associations have gone to the legislature and said, yes, we agree, we should be paying prevailing wage. But if you make it at the way the current legislation reads, so if it changes in the middle of our job, what happens is you guys get me coming to you and going, I have a change order for $10,000, $15,000 because the wage rates on these positions changed by $1 an hour and they worked 100 hours in that position. So what the cities and counties are asking is not to make that adjustment, but either an annually or every 2 years that you have to update it, because it gives us security on our jobs and the bidding. So that is one that has been out there for a couple of years, and they are considering adding that amendment to it, working with the county, saying you look at it annually on the bid date to update it, to give us a little more security, because in general, city and county jobs are at most a 2-year job. So that's one that will have an impact on Public Works.
One last question on ecology. I'm assuming this isn't in the bill. This is just a rewrite that they're doing of a
Yes.
current deal. Does it have to go out for public input, or is it they just?
It is currently out for public input. They just extended the deadline because this was ecology's thing. So I don't know if you know, I'm on the board of the county engineers.
Yeah.
So we just sent a letter last week because the deadline was last week. So they opened it for 30 days. They opened it in the middle of the atmospheric river over the holidays and closed last week. So a request was made and they extended it at a couple weeks so that we had a time to look at it. So that it was a rewrite, 30 days. It's in the public comments right now. That was all we had, right, Mike? Anything else for us?
No, thanks for the update. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
And let me know if you want any different squishies. I'll leave the calendars up here for the public.
Brad, are you running this one or?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Brad Thurman, Cowlitz County Sheriff. I'm joined by Jason Lorraine of the Prosecutor's Office, and we have some guests from the City of Longview, Assistant City Manager Chris Collins and his counsel James Goodman. We're here to talk with you about the proposed contract with the Humane Society of Southwest Washington for animal sheltering for the next 3 years is the proposed contract. And I don't know if you've seen some information yesterday. Sorry about the short notice on that, laying out basically the numbers. I think it kept you informed over the last few months how this was progressing. But essentially where we're at for next year, the county's portion is going to be $225,000. 2027, it jumps up to 268. And then in 2028, it is at 304,000 for animal sheltering. And those numbers, we arrived at a formula based on past history. So the county and Longview are both right neck and neck at 41%. Kelso's 12%. And Castle Rock and Woodland compromised the next about 5% that's left. Kalama decided not to move forward in participating in this at this point. The other, I guess, add on to this is that the Humane Society of Southwest Washington wants all the entities to have in their animal control ordinance a plan to allow them to do a spay and neuter of feral cats and return them to where they came from. I guess that's considered the best practice right now to do that. And I guess they notch their ears when they release them. So if they show back up, they know they've already been spayed or neutered and don't have to do it again. But requesting that addition to the county ordinance to have that plan in place and authorize them to do that. Other than that, I would mention that the county budget that was approved at the end of last year, they kind of penciled in 135,000 for this contract. It's obviously about 90,000 more, so that's a factor to consider in. And the number I gave you yesterday for the total cost, including our animal control folks, it was about 570. I found out in further review, the county IT expense was not included in there, and that'd be about 18,000 more. So to run our program that we do now, it's a 7-day-a-week program. We have 2 full-time employees doing that, and we also have a part-time person who fills in to cover vacations and days where they're sick or that sort of thing, or maybe some training issues. So that part of it, along with this, I think it approximates about 360,000. That's for our 3 folks and vehicles and associated expenses with running the program. So that's kind of where we're at. With this number, the 225 for 2026 would be pushing probably about 590,000 budget. So beyond that, I don't know if Mr. Lorraine had anything to add, or if you had some questions about that.
Almost $1.8 million over the term of this contract for the 3 years.
Yep. I guess in this baseline, I just add, I included that in the email, but for 2023, the last year, our local humane society did both sheltering and animal control. I think our costs were about 365,000
right in that
with
area.
them. So
Do they still have the requisites that they would like us to get rid of the dog cages at the jail?
that's still part of this. They want, yeah.
So now they want us to adopt their code to fixing, spaying and neutering cats.
That's correct. And I know, just for the record, we did have a joint negotiation board that negotiated with them. Mr. Collins headed that up. And they were the only responsive, I guess, proposer on this. They were the only ones who offered to take on this contract for us. And I know we pushed back a little bit on their original numbers and got a slight discount, not a whole lot, but this is kind of their hard and fast on these numbers financially. Some of the legal language is still bouncing around amongst the attorneys on this to finalize it. But as of right now, I think the numbers we're looking at financially are going to be set in stone if we agree to them.
This, I can only speak for myself, but this is a hard pill to swallow, and it's difficult because I think animals should be taken care of. And I've said it before, and I think it's true. A lot of people will take care of animals before they'll take care of some people. And I don't think that's too far off. But how much do we expect? It feels like they hold a gun to your head here and say, you don't have a choice. And how much of this are we, there's a nonprofit side of the Humane Society where they want to do these spay and neuter and do all this stuff. And it's like, I just want to pay for animal control. I don't want to pay for all your fluff that you want to do on that. And so I wonder, when we ran our kennels, I realized we only concentrated on dogs. And I don't know, I just think, how do we bite the bullet and kind of get back to some of just the basics? And I'm not so opposed to an ordinance. I think we've had a conversation for these people that are abusers, these mills or whatever you want to call them, that we have some kind of something in place that if they keep abusing it, we can, like the tire guy, I always refer to him back in the day, where we could start leaning and maybe recoup some of those costs and maybe put a message to the people that just continually love to the point of abusing, to try and curb some of that. Because I don't know how you just keep telling the taxpayer, you got to pay all this money to take care of these animals. we're taking on the responsibility of what should be a responsible pet owner's job is to take care of their animal. I don't know. It's a tough one for me, Brad, because I don't know how to, I want these animals taken care of, but I don't know how much we are supposed to keep taking that responsibility from others.
Well, and I also don't know how I feel about a private entity dictating to us what our code is and isn't gonna be to do business with them. Amending, well, you can't do this and you have to do this, and,
Yeah.
you know, I struggle with that also.
So I can step in on that, Commissioner Rader. First off, it's horrible optics allowing a singular business dictate to the county what the county is going to adopt as policy. Performing such an act would run, if ever evaluated by a court, it would be evaluated under strict scrutiny. It's not highly thought of, not well received. The Board of Commissioners' job and legislator's job is to generalize any ordinances or laws that it enacts. And this would be a very specific law and a very specific ordinance directed towards one business. That business had its own attorney write the ordinance and is holding the county and other municipalities over a barrel and saying, you're going to adopt this specific ordinance as condition precedent for having the services that we provide under the Humane Society. What precedent does that set for future ordinances, future businesses that might come before this board and say, well, you've done it once, why not again? And in order to contract with us, you're going to have to change the county ordinance to be more favorable towards us. This particular ordinance that was delivered to you and other municipalities is, in our office's opinion, a CYA. They're going to perform a certain function or service for the municipalities, but they want to ensure that if they do something and they do it contrary to what current ordinances state, 72-hour hold in particular, that they're not held accountable or liable for any mishaps that might occur. Conceivably, well, specifically the neutering, spay and neutering of unchipped, healthy animals. Consider this, and I'll use my own animals as an example. I have two very large Maine Coons. They're very expensive cats. We don't have them chipped, and because for this very reason that they're house cats. We don't let them out, they stay inside. But on the off chance they got out, and they got out in Cowlitz County, and they're picked up as a stray in Cowlitz County and delivered to the Humane Society. You know, I don't, but for this hypothetical, I'm going to say I have every intention of breeding these two cats. They're beautiful cats. They could certainly bring in some money if I bred them. The Humane Society receives these cats, spays, neuters them, and lets them go back out, chips their ear. Now, because we've adopted an ordinance that says they can do that, they're not as liable as the county that adopts this ordinance to me. I can come and sue this county saying, hey, you didn't take in consideration the fact that I, a breeder of Maine Coons, or a person who wants to breed Maine Coons, wants to take advantage of a lucrative business, and it is, by the way. And so I'm out a lot of money, and I'm going to ask you, the county, to pay for me, my loss. And litters are about 8 to 10 cats per litter, talking $5,000 to $7,000 per cat, maybe more, depending on the quality of that cat. So you get to see exactly how much money I'm out. And so that's something for this board to consider, is that the way this particular ordinance is written is not favorable to the county. It's favorable to the Humane Society. They're covered, but the county is not. Municipalities are not. So I've reviewed other ordinances within the state. I know that King County, and I bring up King County because they're a county, not a municipality. They have an ordinance which they do neuter animals, but on specific instances. They're not doing the TNR as the Humane Society would like for this county to perform. They also have requirements of spay and neuter for any animals that are not animals for that do not belong to a breeder and a licensed breeder. So any animal that's over 6 months old must be spay or neutered within that county. So they're already adopting that's outside of the Humane Society. And if the county wants to go down that route of spay and neuter, that's an option to do. I also reviewed Mount Vernon in Skagit, where they do have a TNR ordinance. It's a far better written ordinance than this particular ordinance because it doesn't lay all the liability on the municipality, and it creates very specific steps. This has steps, and I'm not saying that it's bad. I just don't think that it's favorable for the county. And if the county is going to adopt an ordinance, it should write its own ordinance and not be held over a barrel for services that we solely need. Last year, as Commissioner Dahl put it up, the county was told pay up. Now we're told pay up, and by the way, legalize the gin mill we're running out the back door. And that's problematic for our office. We find that concerning. We feel that the county might be held liable either in the courts for enacting an ordinance like this, or liable in the courts for financial payment. And so we would advise against that.
I believe the previous language talked about feral cats, and I see nothing in here to define a feral cat. So a domesticated cat that's not chipped, that they can't identify who the owner is right away, they'd be free to do just what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I can't grasp this whole thing with I know the difference between a feral cat. I've trapped a few of them. I don't even want to pick up the live animal trap because they're bouncing around going crazy because a human's getting close to them. And I've taken them down to the pound over the years when there was quite a few of them in my neighborhood. But I see no differentiation here for them to be able to do this. And I also would question, is there a limit to how many cats that they would return back to a neighborhood after they've spayed and neutered them? I understood the argument before was, well, because of the rats and the mice in the neighborhood, we'll put the cats back out there so they can kill the rats and the mice. Is there a limit to where they stop putting them out there? I don't know. Is there some type of control on that? Or is it just start picking up cats? Here, kitty, kitty. Now they can, if they can pet it, it's not a feral cat. So I have great concern that I'm not liking this language at all. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No,
Thank you
agree
so
with
much,
you.
commissioners.
Totally.
Yeah, so just to clarify, the language that was provided is not end of line, adopt this or else. by any shape of the imagination. This was suggested. So if the county wants a different language that achieves the same-ish goal, that's up to the county to decide. That's not a product of what we were trying to accomplish. So
Yeah.
what we were trying to do was come to the negotiation table with the Humane Society or the proposal of the RFP. One, we need to issue an RFP because that's how we're supposed to enter into any agreement that costs money. So previously it was, we entered into these agreements without issuing an RFP, without going through the bidding process. So that fixed that issue. So we formed the joint negotiation board together, if you recall, so we could negotiate so everybody had the same expectations. So we can negotiate from a point of strength instead of a point of weakness with the proposal. The proposal came in, the only proposal was the Humane Society of Southwest Washington. And they came with a pretty strong proposal. It needed, some refinement, and we negotiated through those. As you're aware, we got the price down a little bit, but when we issued the RFP, the primary goal was cost, and to try to mitigate that cost to the municipalities as well as the county, and to keep that cost as low as possible. As well as part of our review process, we went up and we looked at other facilities to see the viability of operating our own shelter. And that was very quickly realized to be a non-starter for this type of cost and the need within our county. So when we talk about the cost of it in general, it's, we're not even covering 50% of the cost that we currently are paying to the Humane Society of Southwest Washington. I think last year in 2025, we covered like 25% of their cost to provide the service to the city, as well as the county and the other cities. So that's, not a lot of money that they're getting from all of us. I think it was $350,000 in total, something along those lines. Their cost was like 1.3 million to provide the service. And that is, of course, there are other programs and things associated with that. What they proposed to us is just for the sheltering, not any of the other special programs. That's all covered through their nonprofit. And they're only asking us to cover like the first year's 50%, 50%, or somewhere close to a little less than 50% of their cost just for the sheltering services. Then it goes up incrementally, and their end goal, not through this contract, but their end goal is to get to where that we are covering 70% of the total cost of the service they're providing, just specifically to the entities involved. It's not any of the other services. It's not their medical services. It's not their clinics. It's not any of their other adoption services. That's all covered by their nonprofit. So, but as far as the TNR program, that was a cost savings measure that they implemented as part of their proposal that said, if you want to do this as cheap as possible, you can do this. And with our goal being to try to reduce the cost as much as possible, that was the thing that, was a big cost driver that saved a substantial amount of money off of their proposal, was implementing a TNR program. If we don't want to do a TNR program, that's great. It's going to cost more money for them to be able to do the services that we ask them to do. So it's a cost driver. I would hope that anybody that has a Maine Coon or something along those lines would understand that, getting it chipped is probably in their best interest if we were to move forward with something like this. But it's.
So over the next 3 years, we're going to pay roughly 1.8, and that only covers 50% of their costs. So the contract after that, we're going to pay 3, somewhere around there. So my question remains is, how much do we keep spending to take care of animals that people should be taking care of for themselves? I mean, how much do I keep asking the taxpayers to pay for these smaller group of people that aren't taking care of animals? I almost hate to say it, but you could do a 1/10 of 1% and raise $3 million a year, and it'd probably be cheaper than this. And how long does it make sense to just, when we were taking dogs and we were putting over there, we had a pretty good return rate. I know and I don't know what the laws are. Jason probably speak better to this than than I can, but in some states, they actually allow inmates, if they volunteer, to help take care of these animals. Is there another model that, even though it would be less animals, less care to some of these animals coming in, that makes more sense? I just don't know how. I just keep asking taxpayers to take care of non-responsible owners' animals.
So, to answer your question from a legal standpoint, legally, we don't have to do any of this. We have certain obligations under RCW 1652 and then our own county ordinance. Those are dangerous animals. Those are the nuisances that we've declared and any animals that are experiencing cruelty. So
So
considering.
those are
those are
like the three
those are the
areas that
basic-
we,
Yeah,
our
and-
basic stuff.
And I think those are the real feel-good issues for the community as it is, but legally, that's what we have. We have adopted as county code and under the state laws need to address. So if you're asking, is returning to the kennel program at the jail viable? Legally, yes.
Well, I appreciate your info. Thank you for that. But I'm gonna revert back to, I read Southwest Washington Humane Society's flyer when we initially started this. And in their flyer, and I quote, it says that they plan on expanding their footprint throughout Washington and increasing their revenues by 90% over the next 10 years. And that's on the backs of taxpayers. It didn't say revenue through their nonprofit. It was talking about them expanding their services and increasing that revenue by 90%. I'm not sure how much I want to play in that arena and be involved in that game. Because I feel like this whole process, I feel like I'm being upsold. You know, I feel like I went to go buy this car, but I'm getting flipped to this car and then to this car, and I'm adding this to this and adding this to that, when all we want is basic services for these animals. And when I looked at what their basic service was, and I'm exaggerating here, but I think it included a buttermilk bath every other night and kibble that was, you know, fresh turkey. I mean, it was ridiculous. And I'm going, wait, these are stray cats. I said cats. Bailey's probably not gonna be happy with me that I'm using cats, but these are just animals that we just need to shelter and to provide for until they're either adopted out or whatever that alternative is at that point. Am I missing something with my analysis here?
Well, I think our concern isn't even if they're adopted. Our concern is the first 72 hours. After that, we no longer have a responsibility to those animals.
Just a couple points. One is looking at the numbers, I think 1,006 animals that just from county residents and our animal control brought in, but over 2/3 of those are cats. That's really the big issue. Larger issue is the cats. When we were doing the kennel program, we did very, very little with cats, primarily dogs. If we did the kennel thing where we're running about a 50% return rate to the owners, which is great. The problem is, what do you do with the other 50% that you have? Like Mr. Lorraine said, after 72 hours, we don't have an obligation and can, I guess, adopt them out or do other things with them. But of course, there's liability associated with adopting out adult dogs in particularly, and it's going to be a manpower issue, and they have the ability to do that. And by what standards are you going to adopt these animals out to the public? And is there a demand out there even for these animals? There would be probably for puppies. Get some older dogs, though, really, I don't think there's a whole lot of market if you get the ones that are vicious or have health issues or older. They're just not really adoptable. So what do you do with them? So I guess the alternative is like, euthanization program, just to deal with them. But you're going to have a backlog of dogs if you don't have some outlet to adopt them out or euthanize them.
This is just a difficult thing. It's like we're on a hamster wheel. We got ourselves on a hamster wheel. We can't get off this dang thing. And it's just growing and growing and growing.
Break the wheel and shoot the hamster.
I know it.
And Longview, you guys you're all in and ready to roll with this.
I obviously cannot speak for council, but we've been keeping council updated along the way, just same as the commissioners have been. I don't see any major roadblocks. We did budget really close to what this is going to cost us for animal sheltering. We only have one animal control officer. We also don't have as much real estate to cover as the county. We don't offer 24-hour or 7-day-a-week coverage. We do cover some of the animal control with our officers, and but I think we've brought in right at 900 animals. I think our majorities are a little bit higher towards the dogs, to the almost right at 1,000 animals. We're really close to almost exact same as the county. But we are having a public hearing on the ordinance that was sent as a sample ordinance for the city. I don't really see it as it being forced down our throat. I see it as a protection for Longview to offer the trap neuter release program. It has been proven to be the best population control tool when it comes to cats. We are thinking about adopting additional ordinances requiring cat licensing, which I believe the county already has cat licensing, and part of that cat licensing would be putting folks on notice that this program is in place, and if their cat is at large, that it would, and trapped, it would most likely be neutered and then released. So this really, for us, it's a cost driver that we're trying to mitigate as much as possible by having a program like this. So, but yeah, Longview is slated to consider this.
What's Kelso doing? Because I know they were originally in with us, weren't they?
Yeah, they still are.
They are.
Yeah, so the only entity that chose not to participate in
Kalama.
Cowlitz is Kalama, and that was specifically due to budgetary constraints. So I know Woodland is and Castle Rock are both slated to move forward as well.
Mr. Collins, I have one question.
Yes,
of
sir.
you, and it's due to the budgetary issue, because part of the ILA, it spells out the percentages of each individual potential municipality participating in there. And Longview is at 41%, I believe, flat, and Cowlitz is at 41.9%. And then the other municipalities are at significantly less, but they're still at a percentage. There are clauses within the ILA that consider adopting or, removal from and not participating in the ILA at any point in time, giving 60-day notice. And what happens with the percentage of the cost that particular municipality once they're gone? Who do the other municipalities then take on the burden of that prior?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
And James, correct me if I'm wrong, but that whatever that jurisdiction cost would no longer be paid.
Okay, because that is a concern for this board to take into consideration. Is like, is the county going to have to suffer, or is Longview going to have to suffer additional costs if
Somebody pulls
Kelso
out.
decides to leave,
Yeah.
or Woodland decides to leave, or
Yep.
Castle Rock decides to leave?
We'll make sure that that language is, if it's not clear in there already, we'll make sure it gets built in that
All right.
if a jurisdiction pulls out, then the contract is reduced by the according amount based
Okay.
on the percentage.
I appreciate that. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And that percentage is based on experience.
Yeah, so
Right.
what we did is we took the total number of pets over the past, we had, I think at the time we developed that, we had the first 3 quarters of 2025, which is very consistent to the information we got just yesterday for the full 2025. And we divided that up based on usage. So it's an exact representation of the usage of the service. And that is something that could be revisited annually if the board is interested in doing that, or if something significantly changes one direction or another. I would suggest that we review that annually and amend that accordingly. Because Longview doesn't want to pay for a whole bunch of dogs that the county brings in, and I'm sure the county doesn't want to pay for a whole bunch of critters that the Longview brings in.
Cats that get picked up and brought in, are the majority of them trapped? Are they feral cats? Or are they just somebody picked up a cat wandering in the alley, picked it up, brought it in and dropped it off? Or if they're trapped animals, I guess is the question.
I think that's a really great question. I don't know the exact percentage of which is trapped, which is physically brought in, which is, we know exactly how many are brought in by Humane Society or by our staff that are trapped or caught by animal control. But I don't know what is brought in by citizens as far as, how many are trapped versus not trapped.
Okay, thank you.
I know the number we had for the first 9 months of this year, there was 458 kittens. So that tells me that people are bringing litters of kittens in, I would guess, probably more so than the trapping program.
And to make the percentages are based on what our animal control brings to the facility, it doesn't take into consideration what citizens bring in. It's just what our animal control brings in.
I think you sent us a thing that showed almost by day what was brought in or something, and there was a lot of kittens.
Yeah. Yeah, they're doing a really good job comparatively to what the information we previously got under the other management and tracking that information. And there's been a few instances where like Woodland mentioned that there's been a couple times where it's been actually a county location, but a Woodland address that they were able to get cleaned up and make sure it's being charged to the appropriate entity. But
with the TNR situation, does it apply to cats the same as it does with dogs? We bring a dog in, spay, neuter it, clip its ear and let it go?
this is only for cats.
Only for
Dogs
cats.
still go through the hold process.
So that's mainly just a population control thing,
Yep.
because we're just letting them back out on the streets.
Yeah, correct. And we understand that most cats, even when they're your cat, they still act like a wild animal. And this is what the Humane Society gave us in their presentation was just because they're out on the street doesn't necessarily mean that they're feral, but sometimes they completely act feral. I know my cat, if it was in a trap and somebody came approaching it, it would probably act pretty feral. But so it's hard to tell, almost impossible to tell what's feral, what's not feral. So it's really difficult, but this program is specifically only for cats, and it's a population control, but for us, mainly it's a cost savings.
Well, outside of the population control, I would say that we could do a PSA, stop trapping cats and stop picking up stray cats and bringing them in.
Yeah.
And then you solve that problem. But if it's a population control mechanism, then I can understand that.
Yeah.
Other than that, let a cat be a cat and
Yeah.
catch mice and do what it does out.
Yeah, it was presented to us as the best possible option to have animal control services for felines is how they put it. That is the most humane, the most cost effective, and ultimately the most effective for animal control. That's how it was presented to us.
It's more cost effective than to euthanize them.
So just bringing them in and euthanizing them? Probably
Go
not.
through the waiting
Commissioner.
process, nobody claims them, just
Yeah.
euthanize them.
So
Isn't that
that's-
population control?
That is what they tell us, that cost for holding them and trying to adopt them and eventually going through their program and euthanizing them, that's what costs the money, is the actual housing and holding of the
I
cats.
skipped the trying to adopt them part.
Yes,
If you do the three-day waiting and nobody's claimed them, euthanize them.
I don't know how
skipping
much their cost is to spay a cat. But I'm venturing if with that method, it would probably be cheaper to do what you're suggesting. I'm guessing.
And I would,
I would wonder how many times a cat gets run through the system, the same one. And maybe that's why they clip the ear, but
That is why they clip the ear, yeah.
You guys mind if I add?
not at all.
Excuse me. So a couple points about there's also an ecological aspect of the spay, neuter, and release. Part of environmental protection and conservation is stabilizing ecological areas. Cats out at large are part of the environment. They're part of the natural landscape. So if you are removing these predators from these ecological areas, it creates instability, it creates a vacuum, and then it creates demand for more stray cats. So you have unneutered cats multiplying to fill the void that is left by the cat that has been pulled out. So the idea of returning it is to create stability in the environment. You're not removing a predator, but you're also removing its ability to multiply. So the idea of that is to keep things stable. It's population control so they don't multiply, but when you remove them, you create more demand for more cats. You're just perpetuating the problem. The other thing is if you're just spaying and releasing them, you're not holding them and increasing your costs that way. And further on top of that, if you are to Mr. Lorene's concerns about what happens when you neuter a cat that's someone's prized breeder cat, if you're euthanizing these cats, you're running into the same problem. You're not avoiding that same, the risk you run of destroying someone's ability to make a living off the breeding the cats. So I'll also add, Mr. Lorene and I are familiar with each other. Previously, I worked for the county, but I also worked for Lewis County in the same role that Mr. Lorene serves here for Cowlitz, and I was their sheriff and animal attorney, and they had their own shelter. And a lot of the problems that are, or a lot of the solutions that are proposed by the Humane Society here are solutions to problems that you will run into if you administer your own animal shelter. What do you do when you run out of kennels? What do you do when, there's a breeder who has 30 dogs that need to be homed? When we employ the Humane Society in this role, they have the infrastructure, the ability to handle these big things that become massive burdens for local municipalities when they occur. So that's one of the other benefits of employing the Humane Society in this setting is they can respond to these big events, overcrowding, things like that become huge burdens on taxpayers and local municipalities.
So you're saying we're required to take them?
It
I
requires.
mean, if they have this breeders out there and they do this, we have to take them? We have to ship that burden to us and not to them?
Well, the choice is between not having animal sheltering and animal control and having it. If you're going to have it, you want it to be as cost effective and efficient as possible. When counties administer their own animal sheltering, that requires them to develop networks with nonprofits you have to establish a relationship with a vet to euthanize the animals. And then you're paying out of pocket from the county to euthanize the animals. You have to find places for them to be placed if you have overcrowding, if you don't have capacity. So if you're going to have an animal shelter and you're going to have an animal control function, it's our position as the city of Longview that this endeavor goes towards doing this in the best practice possible versus us administering our own animal shelter and having to deal with the day-to-day fallout and complications that come with that.
Mr. Chairman, hi, it's Doug Jensen. I'm the Chief Civil Deputy Prosecutor. Can I interject a couple comments? I don't mean to interrupt, but I think it's probably a good point to do that.
Sure.
Okay. First off, when I've been listening, and my first comment is when someone says, I don't mean to conflict with legal counsel, it's like saying, I don't mean to offend you, but it has the same result. The second part of it is, we're getting a dissertation from a municipal government and their attorney as to their, concept of what this agreement means and how you should interpret it when you have your own attorney sitting wearing a tie across from you telling you something different. So I appreciate, those types of comments can be tendered by counsel for Longview and the manager to your representatives and our attorney, not during public comment periods, but hopefully in a different forum, because this is just simply a circular presentation for you. And it doesn't provide Mr. Levine an opportunity to discuss with you as a client with attorney-client privilege and representation, the opportunity to decipher and explain his interpretation and application of those comments. So let's take this to another forum. Everybody can put their soapboxes away and let's come back to this if the board needs to at another date.
Works for me.
I had a question for you, Jason, and maybe you can do a little work in some states, and you're able to, if you have volunteers in jail, the jail staff can help you with some of that. And is Washington State, if we had volunteers that would help when we had the kennels over there, it was my understanding that some of them took some of those dogs and did things with them and stuff at the time anyway. I don't know if that's totally true, but I just like to know if that's a possibility. I'm not saying that's what we're going to do, but I want to know if it's a possibility. There just seems to be, and I'm struggling with all this, that we're supposed to be responsible for unresponsible people. And I don't know that the taxpayer has to be on that hook for all the way. And if that means, where do you want me to spend the money? We've outlined to you what the budget looks like, what's coming in and stuff. So you want me to spend it on people or you want me to spend it on animals? So where do we want to draw this line? And I don't care what's been said. These people are holding the gun to our head. Actions speak louder than words. They can tell me all the flowery words they want to, but I see what they're doing, and it's pretty obvious. When they state that they want up to 90% of revenues coming from this, I know where this is headed, and it's not headed to a good place. So I would agree, maybe some little work on that and get together again.
I can absolutely look into the issue of having a volunteer program with inmates at the county jail. And I can provide information to you at another time, maybe next week. We can adjourn
okay.
to then. I wanted to return to one of your questions regarding the puppy mills or, 30 animals found in a puppy mill. That in and of itself would fall under our remit, the county's remit, because it is animal cruelty or considered animal cruelty. And therefore we would be responsible for those
You would have to do
sorts of,
something there, okay.
yeah.
And I'll add, when we did have the kennel over there, none of the jail inmates were involved. Some of the jail staff did get involved a little bit.
That might
walking
have been
them
why I
and
heard the jail staff help.
taking them home, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's always been the big concern when we're running our own kennels, these big cases. What do you do when you get?
And I know there's people that will home things for a while. I don't know what that network looks like in Cowlitz County. If there's some that take it, I know on Alaska, a place just opened up where they home some of that. I don't know what it looks like in our county.
I think
You're
we have
looking
a
at
home
somebody that
person in the
homes
room
things?
right now, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Savannah
yeah.
would home some cats.
We can always call Andy Hamilton and his wife.
Well, and I got a sister-in-law that would take some too, but then I don't know what the requirements are for these people to take some of these on a temporary basis. You know, I don't want to assume somebody wants to take on liability that they don't want to take on.
And certainly the veterinary expense too, that goes
Yeah.
along with that. Who would pay that?
Yeah,
Kind of be on the hook for that, so.
okay,
And just, you're probably aware, we do have a temporary agreement with the Humane Society through the end of February to continue the terms of 2025
yeah.
with the asterisk that once we settle, they'll retro back to January 1 to collect any additional that
Yeah.
they're owed. But we do have that timeline we're under.
I know we're on a timeline, but I also agree with Doug. I think we're just circling here and probably not accomplish anything. So maybe give us a chance to run some of this through ourselves and some additional information and figure out what to do.
I can evaluate that and have an answer to you for Tuesday afternoon if you would like.
Yeah.
I do have something in Wahkiakum County in the morning, but I should have plenty of time the rest of the week to, consider the options.
Okay. Are you guys good with that?
Yeah,
Next
I
Tuesday?
am.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's do that. We'll schedule you next Tuesday and take a look at it again. Okay, thanks, Brad. I'm hearing we had a miscellaneous. Okay.
Shelley Pierce, Risk and Safety Manager. Clerk of the Board had asked our department to look at a request for guidance and proposal for additional surety bond coverage on your directors, deputy directors, and things like that. So I went down the rabbit hole. I reached out to Risk Pool to see what type of coverage we had. And we currently have a crime coverage policy that protects us from dishonest acts. It represents us financially to be able to protect those staff as it stands today. I also reached out to our broker who we've been having communication on to see, is this a coverage that we need? And so, and also Inside Counsel, Mr. Doug Jensen. And Inside Counsel and our broker both stated that it's a redundancy to gain an additional surety bond on those additional staff members. With our crime policy that we have in place, that is a blanket of coverage, should they do something dishonest and egregious, we would be covered. So the comments that I have for the board is this would be wasteful resources. We'd be, spending money that we obviously right now in this budget, term that we have right now is just unnecessary. So that's my feedback. Those are my recommendations. We're covered. We've also followed the RCW on all of our elected officials, commissioners, sheriff, all of the people for the county that need to have that blanket of surety bond coverage. We followed the statutes, the RCW, so they are covered under that surety bond policy. But my recommendation is to not add additional financial burden onto the county, that we have enough coverage.
Okay,
Sounds good.
I
Okay,
think that's
any questions?
what we were asking for, so we appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. Okay, thank you.
Anything else? You guys want to make the Humane Society decision? No, okay.
Well, he said some things I really want to take issue with. About half of what he said, I think is bullshit.
Yeah, I'm thinking, I don't disagree with you, Commissioner. It's a tough one for me, and we'll reconvene it. Okay, anything else? We all good? Okay, we will adjourn.